I should have seen it coming. Maybe deep down I did. But I chose to ignore the signs. Mark had always been competitive. It's what attracted me to him in the first place. His drive, his ambition, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about closing a deal. But I never thought he would turn that competitive edge against me. Not after 16 years of marriage. Not after building everything together. The morning it all fell apart started like any other. I was preparing for my meeting with Horizon Global, my biggest client. They represented nearly 40% of my consulting business's revenue, and I'd spent months designing their new market expansion strategy. The presentation was polished, the numbers were solid, and I felt confident. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Andersons tonight," Mark said, kissing me on the cheek as I gathered my materials. "Good luck with Horizon today. Knock 'em dead." I smiled, touched by his support. "Thanks. I think they're going to love the Asian market analysis." Little did I know those would be the last normal moments of my marriage. When I arrived at Horizon's headquarters, something felt off immediately. The receptionist gave me a strange look, almost pitying. "Ms. Todd, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your meeting was canceled." "Canceled? That's impossible." I confirmed with Mr. Huff yesterday. She checked her computer. "It says here your services are no longer required. Mr. Huff is in a meeting with—" She hesitated. "With who?" I pressed, my stomach tightening. "With Mark Todd from Todd Strategic Partners." The floor seemed to drop from under me. Mark didn't have a meeting today. At least none he'd told me about. And Todd Strategic Partners? That wasn't our company. We ran Carson Todd Consulting together. Or so I thought. "There must be a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mark Todd is my husband. We work together." Her expression confirmed what I already knew in my gut. "I'm sorry, Ms. Carson. The contract was signed with Todd Strategic Partners last week." I stood there, briefcase clutched in my hand, as the pieces fell into place. The late nights, at the office, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in my Horizon strategy. He hadn't been supporting me. He'd been studying me, learning my approach so he could steal my client. I called Mark immediately, but he didn't answer. Instead, an email notification popped up on my phone. From him. "Sophia, business is business. You're good, but you think too small. Horizon needs someone who can take them to the next level. You will never get a contract in this market again. There is only room for the big players here." I read it twice, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. 16 years of marriage reduced to business is business. I drove home in a daze, tears blurring my vision. When I arrived, I discovered more betrayals waiting for me. The home office had been cleared out. Mark had taken all our shared business files. Our joint business account had been emptied. He'd been planning this for months, methodically dismantling our partnership while I trusted him blindly. I collapsed on our bedroom floor, surrounded by emptied drawers where his clothes had been. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Mark. "I've moved my things to the new apartment. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. It's better this way. We were always better competitors than partners. You'll land on your feet. You always do. Just not in this industry anymore." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. He'd systematically destroyed my professional life, too. Years of hard work, client relationships I'd carefully nurtured, all stolen in one calculated move. I didn't cry. Instead, a cold clarity washed over me. I took a deep breath and typed 2 words in response. "Interesting. Watch me." I had no idea how I would recover from this, personally or professionally. I had no plan, few resources, and a heart that felt like it had been put through a shredder. But one thing was certain. Mark Todd had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because he was right about one thing. I did always land on my feet. What he'd forgotten was that I landed running. As I sat there on our bedroom floor, my bedroom floor now, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello?" My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "Ms. Carson? This is Caroline Huff, Edwin Huff's daughter." Edwin Huff was the CEO of Horizon Global, the client Mark had just stolen from me. "Caroline, what can I do for you?" I asked, confusion momentarily displacing my grief. "I think the question is what I can do for you," she replied. "I just overheard my father arguing with your husband. Something doesn't feel right about this whole situation. Can we meet?" I gripped the phone tighter, my mind racing. "When and where?" "Tonight. The Meridian Hotel Bar at 8. Come alone." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, heart pounding. Was this a trap? Another of Mark's manipulations? Or was it the first thread of a lifeline I so desperately needed? One thing was certain. I had nothing left to lose. I had no idea that meeting Caroline Huff would be the first step in a journey that would change everything, and ultimately lead to the most satisfying moment of my life. Watching Mark's face as his perfectly constructed new world came crashing down around him. I arrived at the Meridian Hotel 30 minutes early, my mind racing with possibilities. The elegant bar was dimly lit, offering pockets of privacy perfect for clandestine meetings. I chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance and ordered a scotch on the rocks. Mark's drink, not mine. But tonight, I needed its bitter strength. At precisely 8 p.m., Caroline Huff walked in. I recognized her immediately from Horizon's company events, tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal pantsuit, with the same commanding presence as her father. At 32, she was the company's chief innovation officer, and Edwin Huff's only child, the heir apparent. She spotted me and walked directly to my table, no hesitation in her stride. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I'm curious why you called," I replied, studying her face for clues. "Your father just signed with my husband." Caroline signaled for the waiter. "Gin and tonic, please." Once he left, she leaned forward. "My father signed with your husband because he was led to believe you were stepping back from the business, that you wanted to focus on family and had recommended Mark take over the account." The scotch turned acid in my stomach. "That's a lie." "I know." Her expression was grim. "I only found out today. I've been in Singapore for the past month, launching our Asia-Pacific headquarters. When I returned this morning and saw the new contract, something felt wrong. My father always spoke highly of you. Suddenly replacing you made no sense." She took a breath. "Then I overheard your husband talking to our CFO. He was boasting about how easily he'd pushed you out, how you'd never work in this industry again." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Mark's betrayal was even more calculated than I'd realized. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "What's your stake in this?" Caroline's eyes, sharp and analytical like her father's, fixed on mine. "2 reasons. First, I respect you. Your market expansion strategy for us was brilliant. Second, I don't trust your husband. He got this contract through deception, which makes me wonder what else he's lying about." The waiter delivered her drink, and she took a slow sip before continuing. "There's something else you should know. The board is considering making him our exclusive strategy consultant across all divisions. That would be a $50 million contract over 5 years. I nearly choked on my drink. $50 million? Yes. And while I can't stop my father from working with Todd's strategic partners on our current projects, I can influence the board's decision on this larger contract." She paused. "Especially if I had evidence that Mark Todd obtained his position through fraudulent means." The implication hung in the air between us. I felt a dangerous spark of hope. "What exactly are you proposing, Caroline?" "An alliance. I help you gather evidence of your husband's deception. You help me ensure Horizon doesn't commit to a long-term relationship with someone untrustworthy." She leaned closer. "And maybe, in the process, you rebuild what he tried to destroy." It sounded too good to be true. "Why not just tell your father what you overheard?" "Mark's clever. He's already won my father's confidence. Without proof, it's my word against his. And my father," she smiled ruefully, "he's brilliant but stubborn. Once he makes a decision, he hates admitting he was wrong." I knew that about Edwin Huff. It was one of the challenges of working with him, and one of the reasons securing Horizon had been such an achievement. "What kind of evidence are you thinking?" I asked. "Emails, documentation, anything showing he deliberately misrepresented your position to steal the account." I thought about our home office, now stripped bare. He took everything when he left. All our business files. Are you sure about that? Caroline raised an eyebrow. People like your husband. They're meticulous about covering their tracks, but they're also arrogant. They make mistakes. She was right. Mark was nothing if not arrogant. I need time to think, I said finally. This alliance could be my path to redemption. Or a deeper trap. Of course. Caroline slid a business card across the table. My private number is on the back. Take the night, but remember, the board meets in 3 months to finalize the exclusive contract. Our window of opportunity is limited. After she left, I sat alone, turning her card over in my fingers. 3 months to find evidence, rebuild my reputation, and stop Mark from securing a $50 million contract that should have been mine. It seemed impossible, but as I drove home to my half-empty house, something Caroline said kept echoing in my mind. People like Mark make mistakes. The question was, what mistakes had my husband made, and how could I find them? The next morning, I stood in our home office, my office now, surrounded by empty shelves and vacant spaces where our shared life had been. Mark had taken the obvious. Client files, contracts, our shared laptop. But 16 years of marriage had taught me one thing about Mark Todd. He was a creature of habit with an absolute confidence in his own cleverness. I started with his hiding places, the loose floorboard in the closet where he kept emergency cash, the hollow book on the shelf, The Art of War, how appropriate, where he stored backup drives. Nothing. Then I remembered his ridiculous superstition. Mark never threw away a pen that signed a major contract. He kept them in a wooden box his father had given him, tucked in his nightstand drawer. It was sentimental, unlike him in almost every way, which is perhaps why I'd always found it endearing. The drawer was empty, of course, but something nagged at me. The box had a false bottom. Mark had shown it to me once, years ago, pleased with his secret compartment, like a little boy with a hidden treasure. I knelt beside the nightstand, examining it more carefully. The drawer had been cleared out, but the nightstand itself, I ran my hands along its underside and felt it, a slight irregularity in the wood. Pressing firmly, a small panel popped open. Inside was an external hard drive. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. There was a sticky note attached with a string of characters, a password, written in Mark's precise handwriting. Hope surged through me as I plugged it into my personal laptop. The drive was encrypted, but the password worked. And there they were. Backups of everything. Client files, emails, contracts, financial records. Mark hadn't been able to part with them. Couldn't bear not having access to the fruits of our shared labor. I scrolled through the files frantically until I found a folder labeled Horizon Transition. Inside were dozens of emails between Mark and various Horizon executives, carefully cultivating relationships behind my back. And there it was, an email to Edwin Huff, dated 3 months ago. Edwin, as discussed, Sophia has decided to step back from client work to focus on personal matters. She's asked me to assume responsibility for the Horizon account during this transition. I'm honored by her confidence in me and eager to continue the excellent work she's begun with a few strategic enhancements I believe will better serve Horizon's global ambitions. Rage boiled inside me. The calculated manipulation, the careful wording suggesting this was all my idea, my choice. And next to that email was a draft of a new business plan, Todd Strategic Partners, with a formation date 6 months ago. He'd been planning this for half a year. I was taking screenshots of everything when my phone rang. Caroline, I need to see you, I said before she could speak. I found something. That's why I'm calling. We have a problem. My father wants to move up the board vote on the exclusive contract. It's happening in 3 weeks, not 3 months. My stomach dropped. Why? Mark convinced him that Horizon needs to lock in the partnership before you create problems. He's painted you as bitter and vindictive. Said you might try to sabotage his relationship with us out of jealousy. Of course he had. Mark was playing defense, accelerating his timeline because he knew I wouldn't go down without a fight. I found emails, I told her. Mark told your father I wanted to step back. He claimed I asked him to take over the account. It was all lies. That's a start. But it's not enough, Caroline replied. We need more. Something that shows he's not just dishonest with us, but that his business strategies are fundamentally flawed. I thought about the hard drive, still plugged into my laptop. I might have that too. I need time to go through everything. Time is exactly what we don't have, Caroline said. The board dinner is in 3 weeks. Mark will be presenting his 5-year strategy for Horizon. My father is already half convinced to champion him. A sudden idea struck me. What if there was another presentation that day? A better one? What do you mean? Get me into that dinner, Caroline. As your guest. Let me show the board what they'd be missing if they sign with Mark. There was a long pause. That's risky. Mark will be there. My father might see it as the exact vindictive behavior Mark warned him about. Then we need to make sure my presentation is so compelling, so clearly superior, that it doesn't matter how Mark tries to frame it. My mind was already racing with possibilities. 3 weeks is tight, but I can do it. All right, Caroline finally agreed. I'll arrange it. But Sophia, you need to be prepared. Mark won't take this challenge lying down. Once he knows you're fighting back, he'll get nasty. I thought about the man who had shared my bed for 16 years, who had systematically dismantled my professional life while smiling to my face. He already has, I said. But he doesn't know what I'm capable of. Not yet. After hanging up, I turned back to the hard drive, determination hardening inside me. I had 3 weeks to build an unassailable case against my husband and create the presentation of my lifetime. Sleep would be optional. I was about to begin when my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Careful, Sophia. I have friends at Horizon too. Back off now, or what's left of your reputation won't survive what comes next. Some secrets are better left buried. A chill ran through me. How did Mark know? Who else at Horizon was feeding him information? And what secrets was he threatening to expose? I stared at the message, the newfound confidence of moments ago wavering. What didn't I know about my own husband? And was I truly prepared for the war I was about to start? Mark's threat gnawed at me all night. Secrets better left buried. What did he think he had on me? Our marriage hadn't been perfect, but I'd always been honest, transparent. I'd given everything to our partnership, both personal and professional. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't let fear paralyze me. If Mark wanted to play dirty, I needed to understand exactly what game we were playing. I called the one person who might have insight into my husband's mindset, his former assistant, Melody. She'd worked with us for 5 years before leaving abruptly 6 months ago. Around the same time, Mark had apparently started planning his exit strategy. I'd always suspected her departure wasn't as amicable as Mark had claimed. We met at a coffee shop far from the business district. Melody looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. I wasn't sure I should come, she admitted, clutching her latte. Mark made it clear I shouldn't contact you. Why would he do that? I asked, though I already had my suspicions. Melody hesitated. He said you were unstable, that the separation was hard on you, and you might try to drag me into it. Of course, Mark was controlling the narrative, painting me as the bitter, unhinged ex. Is that why you left the company? I asked gently. Her eyes met mine, then darted away. No, I left because I couldn't be part of what he was doing. Which was? Building his own company behind your back, using your strategies, your client relationships. She swallowed hard. He had me set up accounts you didn't know about. Create presentations with your work, but his name. He said you'd agreed to step back, that you were having personal issues. The familiar rage bubbled up. Personal issues? He implied you were struggling with anxiety, maybe depression, that you'd agreed he should take a more active role while you recovered. She looked at me directly now. But you seemed fine to me. It didn't add up. It wasn't true, I confirmed. Any of it. I figured that out eventually. That's why I quit. She hesitated again. There's something else you should know. About the Huff contract. I leaned forward. What about it? Mark didn't just lie about you stepping back. He altered your original strategy for Horizon, the one Mr. Huff loved so much. He kept the strong parts but changed key recommendations to align with the board's pre-existing biases. What do you mean? Your strategy recommended diversification into emerging markets in Southeast Asia. Mark changed it to focus primarily on China because he knew that's what Edwin Huff personally favored, despite market indicators suggesting otherwise. I felt sick. He compromised the strategy to flatter Huff's preconceptions. Melody nodded. It's not just unethical, it could be disastrous for Horizon. China's market is saturated in their sector. Your original analysis was correct. I need to prove this, I said, my mind racing. Do you have copies of anything? No, Mark was careful. Melody took a deep breath. But there's someone who might. Bruce in accounting. He and Mark had a falling out just before I left. Something about expense reports that didn't match up. Bruce threatened to report some discrepancies, and Mark had him moved to a different department. Another lead. Thank you, Melody. This helps more than you know. As we were saying goodbye, she grabbed my arm. Be careful, Sophia. Mark isn't just ambitious, he's ruthless. He'll do whatever it takes to protect what he's building. So will I replied. Bruce wasn't hard to find. Still at the company, demoted to managing accounts payable, a waste of his CPA credentials. He agreed to meet me after work. Expense reports? I prompted once we were seated in a quiet corner of a local bar. Bruce nodded grimly. Mark was double billing client work, charging Horizon for research that other clients had already paid for. I caught it during a routine audit. That's fraud, I said, stunned at how far Mark had gone. Exactly. When I confronted him, he said it was a temporary solution to cash flow issues. Promised to fix it. A week later, I was reassigned. Do you have documentation? Bruce smiled for the first time. I'm an accountant, Sophia. Documentation is what we do. He slid a USB drive across the table. Everything's here. The original expense reports, my audit notes, emails where I raised concerns, even his thinly veiled threat when he had me transferred. I stared at the tiny drive. More ammunition against Mark. Why are you helping me? This could jeopardize your job. Because I've watched you build that company with integrity for years. What Mark did to you, and is doing to our clients, it's wrong. He shrugged. Besides, this job is a dead end. I've got nothing to lose. As I drove home, I felt a shift in momentum. Mark had resources, connections, a head start. But I had truth on my side, and growing evidence of his deception. Back at my desk, I plugged in Bruce's USB drive and began compiling everything into a coherent case. The altered Horizon strategy, the fraudulent billing, the emails proving Mark had lied about my role. It was damning, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed to complete the puzzle. To understand exactly what Mark was planning to present to the Horizon board in 2 weeks. Only then could I create a counterproposal that would expose his flaws while offering a superior alternative. I called Caroline. I need to know what Mark's been telling your father about his China strategy, I said without preamble. I've been trying to get that information, she replied, sounding frustrated. My father's keeping it close. Says it's revolutionary and doesn't want it leaked before the board presentation. That bad, huh? That's not all. Mark's been spending a lot of time with our CFO, going over financials that even I don't have access to. Something about a special financing structure for the China expansion. A chill ran down my spine. Special financing? What kind? I don't know. But our CFO seems concerned. I overheard him telling my father it was aggressive. The pieces started connecting in my mind. Caroline, I think Mark might be proposing something dangerous. His history with Horizon isn't just about stealing my client. There are financial irregularities, too. I explained what Bruce had told me about the double billing. That's serious, Caroline said. If he's done that with other aspects of your business, then his entire operation might be built on financial deception, I finished. And now he wants access to Horizon's finances for this special structure. We need to warn my father. Not yet, I cautioned. Mark's too close to him right now. We need irrefutable evidence, something even Edwin Huff can't ignore. After we hung up, I turned back to the hard drive Mark had hidden. There had to be more there, something that would reveal his complete plan for Horizon. I dug deeper, searching through folder after folder. Around 2 a.m., I found it. A hidden directory containing a detailed presentation for Horizon's board. Mark's masterpiece. The plan he believed would secure him that $50 million contract. As I read through it, my blood ran cold. Mark was proposing a massive expansion into China, funded through a complex web of leveraged investments. The potential returns looked impressive on paper, but the risk was enormous and buried in fine print and misleading projections. If Horizon followed this plan and the Chinese market didn't perform exactly as Mark predicted, the company could lose billions. It wasn't just bad strategy, it was potentially catastrophic. I immediately called Caroline, despite the hour. "I found his presentation," I said when she answered groggily. "It's worse than we thought. He's proposing a financing structure that could bankrupt Horizon if the China expansion fails, which it likely will, based on actual market data. Can you prove it's flawed?" "Yes. I have the real market research, the data he's deliberately misinterpreting. And I can create an alternative strategy that achieves growth without the extreme risk." "Do it," Caroline said, fully awake now. "Create the most compelling counter-strategy you've ever made. I'll make sure you get your chance to present it." For the next week, I barely slept. I built a comprehensive alternative strategy for Horizon, one that respected their ambitions but provided a more diversified, stable path to growth. I pulled in favors from industry contacts, gathered fresh market intelligence, and crafted financial projections based on reliable data rather than wishful thinking, all while waiting for Mark's next move. His threatening text had promised consequences if I didn't back off, yet he'd been strangely silent since. Then, 3 days before the board dinner, it happened. I was preparing for a preliminary meeting with Caroline when my phone exploded with notifications. Emails, texts, calls, all asking about the same thing. The industry blog everyone read had published an exposé on me. According to an anonymous source, I had psychological issues that had affected my business judgment. The article referenced private therapy sessions I'd attended years ago after my mother's death, sessions I'd only ever discussed with Mark. It mentioned prescription medication I'd briefly taken for anxiety. Information that could only have come from someone who had access to my personal medical information. It painted me as unstable, vindictive, and desperate to sabotage my ex-husband's success out of jealousy and mental instability. My phone rang. "Caroline." "I assume you've seen it?" she said tightly. "Yes." My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "My father has too. He's questioning whether we should even allow you at the dinner now." My stomach dropped. "Mark's behind this. He's trying to discredit me before I can expose his plan." "I know," Caroline said. "But it's working, Sophia. My father values stability above all else. The idea that you might be compromised, it's exactly what he fears most." I closed my eyes, feeling the ground shifting beneath me again. So this was Mark's secret weapon, using my most vulnerable moments against me, twisting them into something shameful and dangerous. "What do we do now?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Caroline's reply was immediate and unexpected. "We go nuclear." "Go nuclear?" I echoed, unsure what Caroline meant. "My father responds to strength, not victimhood," she explained. "If you try to defend yourself against these accusations, you'll look exactly like what Mark is painting you to be: unstable, emotional, reactive." "So what do you suggest?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Own it. All of it. Then flip the narrative." There was steel in Caroline's voice. "Meet me at my office in an hour. And Sophia, bring everything you have on Mark's plan. Every piece of evidence. It's time to stop playing defense." I arrived at Horizon's headquarters with a strange sense of déjà vu. Just weeks ago, I'd stood in this same lobby, discovering my husband's betrayal. Now I was returning, armed with knowledge and determination instead of naivete. Caroline ushered me directly into a conference room where, to my surprise, 3 other people waited. Bruce from accounting, an elegant older woman I didn't recognize, and, most shocking, Edwin Huff himself. My steps faltered. "Mr. Huff, Ms. Carson." His expression was unreadable. "My daughter insists I hear you out before tomorrow's board dinner. She says you have information that affects the future of my company." I glanced at Caroline, who nodded encouragingly. "First, I said, setting down my materials. I want to address the article published about me today. That's not necessary, Huff began, but I held up my hand. With respect, it is. Yes, I attended therapy after my mother's death 5 years ago. Yes, I took anti-anxiety medication briefly during that period. Neither fact affects my professional judgment or capabilities, as my track record with Horizon clearly demonstrates. I maintained eye contact with Huff, refusing to show shame. What should concern you, however, is that someone, almost certainly my ex-husband, accessed private medical information to weaponize it against me professionally. That reveals far more about his character than my grief reveals about mine. Huff's expression softened slightly. Fair point. Now, I continued, let me show you why I'm really here. I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. This is Mark Todd proposal for Horizon's expansion into China, the one he's presenting to your board tomorrow. For the next 30 minutes, I methodically deconstructed Mark's plan, highlighting the misleading projections, hidden risks, and potential financial catastrophe it represented. I showed them the evidence of his fraudulent billing practices from Bruce's files. I presented the emails proving he'd lied about my stepping back from the business. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, the elegant woman I didn't know spoke. Edwin, this is exactly what I warned you about. The projections seem too good to be true because they are. Huff looked troubled. Victoria is our external financial advisor, he explained to me. She raised concerns about aspects of Mark's proposal, but he assured me they were conservative estimates. They're not, I said firmly. They're dangerously optimistic, and they ignore critical market indicators that suggest the China strategy needs significant modification to succeed. Huff turned to Bruce. And you can verify the billing irregularities? Yes, sir, Bruce replied. I have the original documentation showing how client expenses were double billed. It's a clear pattern of financial misrepresentation. Huff was silent for a long moment, fingers steepled under his chin. Finally, he looked at me. What would you propose instead? This was my moment. I pulled out the alternative strategy I'd been perfecting. A more diversified approach. Yes, China remains important, but not at the expense of other emerging markets in Southeast Asia where the competition is less entrenched and growth potential is actually higher. I walked them through my plan. A comprehensive, data-driven strategy that offered strong growth without the extreme risk of Mark's proposal. As I spoke, I could see Huff's expression changing from skepticism to interest. When I finished, he nodded slowly. This makes sense. It aligns with our long-term vision while managing risk appropriately. He looked at Caroline. You were right to bring this to my attention. Relief washed over me. Thank you for listening. The question, Huff continued, is what to do about tomorrow's board dinner. Mark Todd is still scheduled to present. Caroline leaned forward. That's where the nuclear option comes in. The private dining room at Le Méridien was intimidatingly elegant. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the long table where Horizon's board members mingled before dinner. Mark stood near the head of the table, charming as ever in his perfectly tailored suit, commanding the room's attention. He didn't notice me enter with Caroline. When he finally spotted me, his confident smile faltered momentarily before recovering. He excused himself from his conversation and approached us. Sophia, he said, voice dripping with false concern. I'm surprised to see you here. After that unfortunate article, well, I was worried about you. His eyes conveyed a different message. You should have backed off when I warned you. Mark, I replied calmly. I'm feeling quite well, actually. Ready for an interesting evening. Confusion flickered across his face. He'd expected tears, anger, humiliation, not this composed woman standing confidently beside the CEO's daughter. Ms. Carson will be joining us as my personal guest, Caroline explained. I thought her insights might be valuable to our discussion. Before Mark could respond, Edwin Huff called the room to order. Everyone took their assigned seats, Mark at Huff's right hand, me further down the table beside Caroline. The perfect position to watch everything unfold. Dinner proceeded with the usual business small talk. I could feel Mark watching me, trying to decipher my presence, becoming increasingly uneasy as the meal progressed without incident. He was waiting for me to make a scene, to confirm the unstable image he'd tried to create with that article. Instead, I ate my sea bass and engaged pleasantly with the board members near me, ignoring him completely. Finally, as dessert was served, Huff stood. Before we move to Mark's presentation, I'd like to address a matter that has recently come to my attention. Mark straightened, adjusting his tie confidently. This was his moment, or so he thought. Yesterday, Huff continued, I had the opportunity to review some concerning information about the China expansion proposal you're about to see. Mark's smile froze. He glanced at me, then back at Huff. It appears there are significant discrepancies between the market projections in this proposal and the actual data, Huff said. Additionally, I've been presented with evidence of troubling financial practices that call into question the integrity of Todd Strategic Partners. The room went completely still. Mark's face drained of color. What are you talking about? He managed, voice strained. Huff turned to me. Ms. Carson, perhaps you would be kind enough to share what you've discovered? All eyes turned to me as I stood. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of pity for Mark. Then I remembered his betrayal, the cruel email, the exposed private medical information, and the pity evaporated. Certainly, Mr. Huff. I nodded to a waiting staff member who distributed folders to each board member. What you're receiving is documentation of fraudulent billing practices by Todd Strategic Partners, along with evidence that Mark Todd deliberately misled Mr. Huff about my role in our former business. Mark pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. This is ridiculous. She's my bitter ex-wife trying to sabotage me because I left her. She's been in therapy, on medication. She's not stable. The outburst hung in the air, making several board members shift uncomfortably. Yes, Mark, I said calmly. I went to therapy after my mother died. Many people do. It doesn't make them unstable, it makes them human. What's truly concerning is that you would access private medical information and use it as a weapon. I turned to the board. But this isn't about our personal relationship. It's about protecting Horizon Global from a high-risk strategy built on misleading projections and presented by someone with a documented history of financial impropriety. I could see Mark's mind racing, calculating his next move. Edwin, he said, turning to Huff, we've talked about this strategy for weeks. You know it's sound. Don't let personal vendettas interfere with business. Huff's expression remained impassive. The board and I have reviewed Ms. Carson's evidence, as well as her alternative strategy for our global expansion. We find her approach more aligned with Horizon's values and risk tolerance. Mark's face contorted with rage. You can't be serious. She manipulated you, used her connection with your daughter to poison you against me. Actually, Caroline interjected, it was the other way around. I approached Sophia after overhearing you boast about how easily you'd pushed her out and stolen her client. Mark's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally and finding none. The controlled facade was crumbling, revealing the ruthless, desperate man beneath. This is insane, he sputtered. You're throwing away months of work based on documented evidence, Huff interrupted firmly. Ms. Carson has provided verifiable proof of your deception, while our own financial advisors have confirmed the concerning flaws in your China strategy. He turned to me. Ms. Carson, would you be willing to present your alternative strategy to the board? Mark made a choking sound. You're giving her my presentation spot? It was never yours to begin with, I said quietly, meeting his eyes for the first time. You stole it, like you stole everything else. As I walked to the front of the room to set up my presentation, Mark's fury was palpable. He stood frozen, watching as his carefully constructed plan collapsed around him. This isn't over, he hissed as I passed him. I paused. Actually, Mark, it is. But don't worry, you'll land on your feet. You always do. I smiled, echoing the patronizing words from his email. Just not in this industry anymore. Then I took my position at the head of the table, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. This was more than a business presentation. It was my reclamation, my redemption. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I began confidently, Let me show you a better way forward for Horizon Global. I could feel Mark's eyes boring into me as I presented, his anger radiating across the room. But something else flickered in his expression too, a growing realization that he had lost. Not just the contract, but everything he'd schemed to build on the ruins of our marriage. What he didn't realize was that his nightmare was just beginning. Because what I hadn't mentioned, what I was saving for the perfect moment, was that his financial improprieties went far beyond double billing, and tomorrow morning, an email with comprehensive evidence would be arriving at the Securities and Exchange Commission. But that was tomorrow's battle. Tonight was about reclaiming my reputation, my confidence, and my future. As I concluded my presentation to enthusiastic approval from the board, I caught Caroline's eye. She gave me the smallest nod of victory. Mark stormed out before the vote was taken. He didn't need to stay to know the outcome. The Horizon contract, and the $50 million that would have come with it, was lost to him forever. What I didn't expect was the text I received later that night. Congratulations on your little victory. Enjoy it while it lasts. You think you know all my secrets, but you've only scratched the surface. See you at the industry conference next week. I always did save the best for last. The annual industry conference, the largest gathering of professionals in our field. I was scheduled to receive an innovation award, my first public appearance since the split with Mark. What was he planning? What final card did he think he had to play? For the first time in weeks, doubt crept back in. What didn't I know about my ex-husband? And was I truly prepared for whatever he was planning? Mark's text haunted me all week. What final move could he possibly have? I'd exposed his deception, recovered my biggest client, and even sent evidence of his financial misdeeds to the SEC. What was left? The morning of the industry conference arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This annual event gathered the most influential figures in our field, the perfect stage for whatever grand finale Mark had planned. I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit, armor for the battle ahead. As my car approached the convention center, my phone rang. "Caroline, are you ready?" she asked without preamble. "As I'll ever be," I replied, watching the imposing building grow closer through the window. "Any sign of Mark?" "Not yet, but my sources say he's definitely attending." Caroline had become not just an ally but a friend over these weeks. "Whatever he's planning, we'll handle it. You're not alone anymore." Her words steadied me. That had been Mark's advantage from the beginning, isolating me, making me believe I had to fight him single-handedly. But he'd underestimated my ability to build new alliances from the ashes he'd left behind. The conference lobby buzzed with industry professionals networking over coffee. I felt eyes following me as I entered. The article about my supposed instability had made the rounds, and my subsequent triumph at the Horizon Board meeting had only intensified the industry gossip. I spotted familiar faces, colleagues who now greeted me with newfound respect after hearing how I'd outmaneuvered Mark. Others still kept their distance, uncertain which version of events to believe. I held my head high, moving confidently through the crowd. There was no sign of Mark. The morning sessions proceeded without incident. I participated in a panel discussion on emerging markets, demonstrating my expertise and subtly reinforcing that I was far from the unstable woman Mark had tried to portray. The audience was engaged, respectful, all signs that my professional reputation was recovering. Still no Mark. By lunch, I was beginning to wonder if his threatening text had been a bluff, a final attempt to unnerve me without any real substance behind it. Perhaps he'd realized he was beaten and decided not to show his face after all. Then I saw him. He entered the main dining hall during the lunch service, immaculate as always in a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He wasn't alone. Beside him walked a striking woman I recognized immediately. Evelyn Jenkins, editor-in-chief of Industry Insights, the most influential publication in our field. They were deep in conversation, heads bent close together. Mark caught my eye across the room and smiled. That familiar, confident smile that once made me feel special, but now sent chills down my spine. He raised his glass slightly in my direction before turning his full attention back to Evelyn. Caroline appeared at my elbow. "Interesting company he's keeping." "Very," I agreed. Watching them settle at a table surrounded by senior executives, Evelyn Jenkins could resurrect his reputation with one favorable article. Is that his endgame? Charm the industry's most powerful editor into writing his comeback story? Caroline's expression was grim. Maybe, or something worse. Evelyn's known for her exposés, too. The awards ceremony was scheduled for the afternoon session. As the time approached, my anxiety mounted. I was to receive the Innovation Excellence Award, a prestigious recognition that, ironically, was largely based on the work with Horizon that Mark had tried to steal. I took my seat near the front of the auditorium, acutely aware of Mark and Evelyn sitting just 3 rows behind me. The weight of their eyes on my back made it hard to concentrate as the ceremony began. Various awards were presented, speeches made. Finally, the host announced, "Our next award is the Innovation Excellence Award, recognizing groundbreaking strategies in global market development. This year's recipient has demonstrated exceptional insight and creativity in her work with Horizon Global. Please welcome to the stage, Sophia Carson." Applause filled the room as I walked to the podium, legs steady despite my racing heart. I accepted the Crystal Award, its weight solid and reassuring in my hands. "Thank you," I began, looking out over the sea of faces. "This recognition means more to me than you might realize." Recent months have taught me that innovation isn't just about market strategies or expansion plans. It's about resilience, about finding new paths forward when the old ones are blocked. I paused, allowing my gaze to move intentionally to where Mark sat. Sometimes the greatest innovations come from our darkest moments. When everything is taken from you, you discover what truly matters and what you're truly capable of. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I could see confusion on some faces, understanding dawning on others. I'm grateful to those who believed in me when others tried to undermine my credibility, to those who recognize that a person's value isn't diminished by seeking help or showing vulnerability. My voice grew stronger, and I'm especially grateful to learn that in business, as in life, integrity ultimately prevails over deception. At that moment, a commotion erupted at the back of the hall. Several people in suits entered, moving purposefully down the aisle. Federal agents. I continued calmly. I believe we all prosper when we uphold ethical standards, when we refuse to tolerate fraud or manipulation, even, especially, from those we once trusted. Mark's face had gone pale as he tracked the agent's progress toward him. Evelyn Jenkins was already sliding away, distancing herself. This award represents not just innovation, but perseverance, not just success, but redemption. I smiled, making eye contact with those in the audience who had stood by me. "Thank you for this honor. I promise to continue earning your trust and respect." As I stepped down from the podium to thunderous applause, the agents reached Mark. The lead agent leaned down to speak quietly in his ear. Mark's expression collapsed from confusion to realization to defeat in a matter of seconds. He stood shakily, allowing himself to be escorted out without resistance. Our eyes met as he passed, his filled with shock and betrayal, mine steady and calm. Evelyn Jenkins approached me as the ceremony concluded. "I think I've been pursuing the wrong story," she said, eyeing me with new interest. "Would you be willing to speak with me about what just happened? About how you rebuilt after betrayal?" I smiled. "I'd be delighted. It's time for a new narrative." Later, as the conference was winding down, Caroline found me on the terrace overlooking the city. "The SEC moved faster than expected on your evidence," she said. "Wire fraud, securities violations, tax evasion. They've been building the case all week. Your documentation was the final piece they needed. I never wanted it to end this way," I admitted, watching the sunset paint the skyline in gold. "Despite everything, we were partners once. I loved him." "I know," Caroline said gently. "But he made his choices, and you made yours." I thought about the journey of the past months, from devastation to determination, from victim to victor. Mark had tried to destroy me, professionally and personally. Instead, he'd forced me to discover a strength I never knew I possessed. My phone buzzed with an incoming email, a notification from my bank. The first installment of my new contract with Horizon Global had been deposited. Not just a contract to replace the one Mark had stolen, but a broader, more prestigious arrangement as their exclusive global strategy consultant. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mark's betrayal had ultimately led me to greater success than we'd ever achieved together. "What now?" Caroline asked, watching my smile as I put away my phone. I took a deep breath of the evening air, feeling lighter than I had in months. Now, I build something new, something entirely my own. For the first time since that devastating morning when I'd discovered Mark's betrayal, I felt nothing but gratitude for the path it had forced me to walk. He had intended it as an ending. Instead, it had become my most powerful beginning.